there was very little, if anything, in the report, in the assessment about climate change, and that's been in past reports.
It would be an extensive and voluminous annual threat assessment if we included every single one. This annual threat assessment is focused.
Every single one of these reports that we have had has mentioned global climate change as a significant national security threat, except this one. Has something happened? Has global climate change been solved?
I can't speak to the decisions made previously, but this annual threat assessment has been focused very directly on the threats that we deem most critical to the United States and our national security.
Joining us to discuss, Senate Intelligence Committee member, Senator Mike Rounds. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight. I just have to remark on that last exchange, you have all sorts of your colleagues wondering about the imminence of the Iran threat, but they all seem very convinced about the imminence of the climate change threat. Seems a little crazy to me. What was your takeaway from today's hearing?
I think the individuals that were in front of our committee did a very good job of laying out specifically what those real threats are today and the ones that are in front of us right now. And it starts with Iran and what they were doing, what they were planning on doing, their nuclear ambitions, their capabilities with regard to intermediate and short-term missile delivery systems, their desire to get intercontinental ballistic missiles, the fact that they were rebuilding their anti-aircraft systems at a time in which we knew, based on literally months of reviewing it, that at some point this was going to come to a head, that they fully intended to move forward with their nuclear ambitions, and that while diplomacy was something that we were trying to do with them, they really had no intentions of following through on it. So the focus there was critical, but around the world, it's still the usual suspects. It's Russia, it's China, it's North Korea, and it's Iran. And in this particular case, that's where the vast majority of the focus was. And the individuals who were in front of us, our witnesses today, I think did a pretty good job of focusing on those.
Senator, part of the problem, however, is the fact that the Democrats are talking about this within their own messaging vacuum. They're talking about high gas prices and oil prices. They're talking about the fact that there is no threat, at least according to them. And that is what their base hears. And so all I'm thinking about is even if this is resolved quickly, I understand what the end game is. My mother actually immigrated to this country from Iran, and she would like to see a new leadership altogether elevated and lifted up by the people. But having said that, how do you make the American people understand the importance of this?
I think part of it is to refocus exactly what the threats are and the fact that this is not going away. We've been dealing with this for more than 40 years, and now President Trump has made the right choice at the right time to limit the loss of life. Look, there is no good time to have any kind of a war, to have any kind of a hostile activity, but it's the responsibility of the president to make the determination of what's best for our country long term. Iran was not going away. They were going to become stronger. They were going to become a greater threat. They were going to have more opportunities to limit the amount of shipping going through the Strait of Hormuz. That was all, very, very clear to any of us that have been following with the classified discussions we've had literally for months. So once again, this is a case of where we need to focus on what the real threats are. There are other threats out there as well. I mean, look, right now at a time in which the Department of Homeland Security is not being funded look, our Democrat colleagues may have concerns, but they've got to work with us. They've got to take a look at all of the concessions that have already been made. They had already agreed to fund the Department of Homeland Security with additional protections, including body cams coming on. We put the money into it. Not just did we authorize it, we funded it. We tried to make things work the first time around, and now they are making further demands, vast majority of which have already been addressed.
Senator, I want to turn to this as well. Tonight, in just about an hour, the Senate will take a procedural vote on another Iran war powers resolution. This one from Senator Cory Booker. Despite his last attempt, or the last attempt, failing, Booker and his self-proclaimed Senate 6 say they're on the war powers warpath. Those are their words, not ours. Is this a total sideshow? What do you make of it?
These are what we call privileged motions, meaning that it's one of the few ways in which a Democrat can bring their proposal to the floor and take up time and space. And so what they're doing is pulling attention away from the Department of Homeland Security, pulling attention away from the fact that right now we've been concerned about people that are not American citizens voting in our elections. And he wants to change the focus, and he wants to bring it back down to the hostilities that are occurring right now in the Middle East. We'll have a vote on it. That's a part of the guidelines and rules within the Senate. We will dispatch it, and then once again, we'll go back to focusing on the Republican agenda. We need to move forward. We need to have an up and down vote on the SAVE Act, which I think 85% of the American people want to see us do. And Democrats are going to have to go back home and explain their votes to the American public. That's going to be tough for them to do.
Senator Mike Rounds, thanks very much for being with us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.